Yeah, I can't disagree with both of you guys in terms of where everyone's heads around their two top goalies. I think coming in, if people truly knew the history of both these goalies health wise to get to this point, you'd probably have a lot more concern for Stolars than you would Joseph Wall. Now, Joseph Wall has a bit of a history as well, but I don't have it in the same kind of scope as I would Stolars with his knees and the
So,
multiple surgeries. So,
His knees were like Hockenpah, like potentially
uh,
career threat.
wow,
yeah, yeah.
that bad?
Well, Hockenpah has no fluid for
Bone on
bodies
bone.
to be floating in.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
See, I'm the opposite, but I guess that's just because I have the prior history with Wool
yeah.
before having it with Stolars. Like, I definitely had more trust in Stolars to stay healthy than Wool, but
Well,
clearly neither of them have been able to do it
we
all
got to
year.
take Brad Treliving at face value on everything seems to be fine structurally,
Mhm.
but
Yeah, I believe
this
that.
wasn't a guy crashing into Stolars. This was something that looked and felt routine that triggered something. So to your point is how's it bowled down the road so you get him back, but where are you? The one thing that we did stress with him coming right back off of that New Jersey game was the load management.
Mhm.
And that's a word that's used today in all of sports and particularly with these two goalies, maybe we underestimated what that would do to their knees or at least to Stolar's knees. Like we didn't necessarily stress that this guy's got a real history here, and maybe we undersold that
Yeah.
the loading of a guy 48 hours after standing on his head and putting his body through every pretzel looking move that you could possibly come up with.
But Kip, it doesn't feel like the extra games are what caused the knee injury. It just feels like his knees just degenerate. Or do you think it is
No,
related to wear?
I do because
Yeah, that's what I want to know from Dr.
No.
G. Like, does it just like
But
fall
is it
Is it
off?
just made of
My-
gingerbread?
no,
What's-
no. My feeling is that if he's had throughout his whole career a rhythm or a feel of being this backup goalie and playing once every 10 days and the knees are fine, but he was really geared towards going into an area at age 30 for the first time in his career where he's kind of looking and acting like a number one goalie here.
Yeah.
And the first time that you really tax him,
Mhm.
and he's never been taxed like this before, is kind of his knee gave out on him.
Yeah.
Is that what happened? His knee gave out on him. It's a freak injury. It's not like there was a moment where we go, "Wow, that looked
Yeah,
that
that
looked
looked bad.
that looked
But
bad."
I said that when it happened. It's worse when nothing happens.
Yeah.
It's worse when it's just the guy just goes, oh, it quit.
Like,
You know,
that was like Wall last year with
So-
the ankle injury with a flutter
know,
puck off the
yeah.
sideboards. Where you're like, what
nothing
happened?
hit it.
To
Yeah.
your point, you're in game one, you're in game three. He plays lights out. Can you go back to him 48 hours later?
Yeah, isn't the point here that you trust if you can't? You trust that the other guy can be as good or good enough. It's almost like, right, they're like doubling down. If we have 10 goalies that break down, one of them should be functional at the right time.
History will show that it's overwhelming that you need one hot guy to get there. The 1A, the 1B, is that
You can trade.
is that
You can trade. Matt Murray and Fleury, they handed it off to each other. Holtby and Grubauer handed it off to
Okay.
each other.
all right? Got any more examples
Binnington
over the last 40 years?
and- Yeah, there's.
Right?
Swayman played game 7 and they lost against the Panthers. So,
Vegas did.
It's-
Is it Fleury and Hill or was it Thompson and A Hill?
and last year against the Leafs, they tried to do the back and forth thing, and Allmark lost game 2. And I was praying for them to start him again.
Yeah.
So,
Listen,
right.
I'm not saying that it can't
yeah,
work.
I'm just saying it's
I'm
possible.
just saying that history has shown that it's not
Yeah.
likely.
But we're now much more in the tandem era where you are using both guys. So yeah, it's not great. Not saying it's a great thing. Why don't we check in on Tree Living about the knee? It is the same knee, is it there? Tree Living?
yeah, this is another.
Is this the same knee that he had issues with before?
Well, he's had some issues with both, but
Yeah, there's been issues there, but it's not. This isn't related to any previous injury or, it's not a reoccurrence. It's not uncommon for players to have, whether it be little loose chips or basically the medical group calls it loose bodies, and it's in the wrong spot. And we waited for a few days to see if it would move. But it doesn't allow him to get full range of motion of his leg right now, so it's got to be removed.
So was it?
I love the line. We waited a few days to see if it would move. Like, was you shaking it out, trying to get it out of, trying to rattle it out?
A snow globe.
I was gonna say, is it a maraca? Like, what are they doing?
Like a piece of loose glue in the shaft of your club or something. You're like, oh.
What are those Australian things that turn up and down?
Snow globes.
Like a rain stick.
So, yeah,
Anyways.
it didn't move. They got to move it. So anytime they cut open your knee and go in there, you're not usually good to go immediately. But first thing I did was like, so how healthy is Matt Murray? I'm worried about Wool right away and started asking questions about Murray.
Hillbilly.
This is his new nickname. Well, we have a new nickname. I've never changed.
We got a new drop.
Dennis Hillbilly.
Oh, God, I walked into that one. The Hilda Beast.
Yeah.
Hasn't been beast-like lately. Got a win the other night, but I think the feel is Matt Murray, I believe, is back.
There is a clip on. Do you want to listen to the general manager gives his thoughts on Murray potentially? Clip 5, please.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I said, when I refer to the depth, it's not just one guy, right? Like we've got 3 guys that have been playing well down there. Dennis, obviously, had a tremendous year there last year, played well in his time up here, but Matt's, that's why we got Matt too, right? That's why we brought Matt there. Now, he was dealing with a little bit of an injury. Touch wood, we anticipate that he's going to get in the net tomorrow there in Wilkes-Barre. And then, go from there.
I think he saw a little bit of action Sunday. I think he came in relief, if I'm not mistaken.
All right. So he's available.
So he's available. My guess is that you probably don't go to Matt Murray until maybe the beginning of next week.
What do you mean go to? Like
Well, bring him up to back up Joseph Wall.
over Hildeby?
Over Hildeby.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not comfortable from what I've seen from Hildeby to be up here and back up.
He's played 3 games. He let in 3 goals and got a win the other
But he
night.
wasn't playing that well in the Marlies.
Yeah.
With the Marlies, he wasn't in his wheelhouse. I think my preference would be to get Matt Murray up here over Hildeby. Just based
Is
on
he having a good year in the minors? I don't even know.
well, I think he was fine before he tweaked something.
Yeah.
And maybe get him back, get him a start.
He's a 9-19 in the regular with the Marlies.
3-1 and
Get him
2,
a start.
6 starts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
That's me though.
No, I
Yeah.
actually totally agree. I think it's sort of like the Minton conversation to me, where we'll talk about that in a little bit, but he goes back down. Maybe not the right choice, but you bring in a guy like Camp, who's more like the 4th-line center type of guy, and you bring up the veteran goalie to kind of be the backup, and you let Hildeby go down there and play in those games and go back and forth with Akhtiamov or whatever. I actually agree, and I mean, I'm not going to.
If you think Hildeby can be something for you and you want him to be
Yeah.
something, I don't think it's a bad spot to get him some action.
Yeah.
The Matt Murray thing is fascinating because is the knock on him not been that he gets hurt?
Yeah.
Leafs facing center crisis amid injuries, eyeing trade market for solutions. As the Toronto Maple Leafs battle through a growing injury list and a suspension, their lack of depth at the center position has become a glaring issue. According to Sportsnet's Elliot Friedman in his latest 32 Thoughts article, the Leafs are among the teams exploring trade options to bolster their lineup. This effort is coming amid increasing competition from teams like the Chicago Blackhawks and Nashville Predators, who have also set their sights on improving their center depth. Friedman didn't mince words about the Leafs' predicament. The teams currently focusing on centers, including Chicago and Nashville, must consider when others will enter the market. Toronto will undoubtedly be one of those teams, he wrote. While the Blackhawks and Predators may have an edge in terms of cap space and assets, the Leafs remain a team to watch as the season progresses. The Leafs situation is urgent, with up to 7 forwards currently unavailable due to injury or suspension. Ryan Reeves is serving a 5-game suspension, while key players like Auston Matthews, upper body, Matthew Knies, upper body, Kaje Jarnkrok, groin/sports hernia, David Kampf, lower body, Max Domi, lower body, and Max Pacioretty, lower body, are all sidelined. The team has even considered temporarily shifting Mitch Marner to the center position, highlighting the severity of their depth issues. This isn't just a short-term concern for the Leafs. Depth at center has been a persistent challenge for the team, and while stopgap solutions like Marner could help in the interim, the front office appears keen to explore longer-term fixes. For fans of the blue and white, this has been a recurring theme. The Leafs' center depth often becomes a problem at the worst possible times. James Myrtle of The Athletic recently added more fuel to the speculation, naming several potential trade targets who could help the Leafs address their issues. Among them is Ryan O'Reilly, a familiar name for Toronto fans. O'Reilly, who signed a 4-year, $18 million deal with Nashville in 2023, might be a trade candidate if the Predators' underwhelming start to the season, 6-11-3, 31st in the league, prompts a rebuild. However, his steep price tag and history with the Leafs, including rejecting a free agency offer less than 2 years ago, make this a complex and potentially unlikely move. Other names mentioned by Myrtle include former Leaf Nazem Kadri, currently with Calgary, as well as players like Michael Granlund, Nick Jugstad, Brock Nelson, Yanni Gourde, Trent Frederick, Radek Faksa, and Sean Kuraly. While some of these options seem more plausible than others, it's clear that general manager Brad Treliving will need to get creative to find the right piece without mortgaging the team's future. Cap space remains one of the biggest obstacles for the Leafs. Unlike teams like Chicago and Nashville, which have more flexibility and assets, Toronto is walking a financial tightrope. As Friedman noted, competition will intensify as cap-constrained teams strive to create room. For the Leafs, that could mean waiting for the market to develop further, a risky move given their current needs. The situation also highlights the Leafs' ongoing struggle to build a roster that can withstand the grueling nature of an NHL season. Injuries are an inevitability in hockey, but Toronto's current predicament underscores the importance of depth, a quality the team has struggled to consistently maintain. Looking back on recent years, the Leafs have often leaned heavily on their star players, particularly Matthews, Marner, and William Nylander. While these players have delivered in spades, the lack of reliable depth options has left the team vulnerable in critical moments. The current crisis at center is merely the latest example of this recurring issue. Some fans have called for more aggressive moves from Treliving, arguing that now is the time to strike while the team's core is in its prime. Others, however, are more cautious, pointing to the dangers of overpaying for short-term fixes. Striking the right balance will be key, especially as the Leafs aim to keep their championship window open. Despite the challenges, there's no denying that Toronto has the talent to be a contender, provided they can patch up their lineup. The ongoing rumors and speculation surrounding potential trades show that the Leafs are at least exploring every avenue to strengthen their roster. For fans of the blue and white, this moment feels like a pivotal point in the season. With a lineup ravaged by injuries and a tough schedule ahead, the Leafs must act decisively to avoid falling behind in the standings. The addition of a dependable center could be the difference between weathering the storm or watching another season slip away. Whether it's O'Reilly, Kadri, or another surprise name, one thing is certain: the Leafs are under pressure to deliver. And for a fan base as passionate and loyal as Toronto's, there's no room for excuses. The time to act is now, and Leafs Nation is watching closely. As the trade deadline approaches, the stakes couldn't be higher. Will Treliving pull off a move that solidifies the Leafs' status as a contender, or will the search for center depth become yet another chapter in the team's long history of what-ifs? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure: it's never boring in Leafs land. As the Maple Leafs navigate this critical juncture, their fan base remains as vocal as ever. Toronto is a city that breathes hockey, and the pressure on Brad Treliving to make the right moves is immense. Every decision he makes, or doesn't make, will be scrutinized, from talk radio to social media, where Leafs Nation is already debating the merits of the various names being floated as potential trade targets. Among the louder debates is whether the team should prioritize a high-profile acquisition like Ryan O'Reilly or Nazem Kadri, or focus on a lower-cost, reliable center who can fill a supporting role without costing too many future assets. While O'Reilly's leadership and playoff experience make him an attractive option, his contract and recent history with the Leafs add layers of complexity to any potential reunion. Similarly, Kadri's gritty, two-way playstyle remains a fan favorite, but his cap hit and availability might render him an unrealistic target. Another factor complicating the Leafs situation is their tight salary cap. While Chicago and Nashville can make moves with relative ease due to their financial flexibility, Toronto must navigate a labyrinth of constraints to make any trade work. This likely means including salary retention or moving existing contracts to make room, which could drive up the cost of any potential deal. The question then becomes, how much are the Leafs willing to sacrifice to address their immediate needs? One potential trade partner generating buzz is the Seattle Kraken. Yanni Gourde, a dependable two-way center, has been mentioned as a possible target. Gourde's versatility and championship pedigree from his time with Tampa Bay make him an appealing option. Seattle, however, is in playoff contention and may not be inclined to part with a key piece unless the Leafs can provide a substantial return. Another intriguing name is Brock Nelson of the New York Islanders. Nelson is a consistent scorer and reliable faceoff-man, qualities that would undoubtedly bolster Toronto's center depth. However, the Islanders are notoriously cautious when it comes to trades, and prying Nelson away would likely require a significant package, including picks or prospects that the Leafs may be hesitant to part with. For all the trade talk, some analysts believe the solution might come from within. Sheldon Keefe has shown a willingness to experiment with his lineup, and players like Pontus Holmberg or Fraser Minton could be given an opportunity to step up. While relying on less experienced players carries risks, it might be the Leafs' only option if the trade market proves too costly or slow to develop. Adding to the Leafs' urgency is the timing. The Atlantic Division remains one of the toughest in the league, with teams like Boston, Florida, and Tampa Bay continuing to dominate. Any prolonged slump could see Toronto slip further down the standings, putting their playoff hopes in jeopardy. For a team with Stanley Cup aspirations, failing to address their weaknesses could have catastrophic consequences. Brad Treliving's history as a general manager suggests he's not afraid to make bold moves. His time with the Calgary Flames was marked by blockbuster trades, including the acquisition of Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar in the Matthew Tkachuk deal. Leafs fans hope he brings that same decisiveness to Toronto, especially as the trade deadline looms. Beyond the immediate need for a center, this situation underscores a broader issue with the Leafs roster construction. Depth has been a perennial concern, and while Toronto boasts some of the league's top-end talent, their reliance on a handful of stars has left them vulnerable in moments like this. Moving forward, addressing this imbalance must be a priority for the front office if the team is to achieve sustained success. As the Leafs head into a critical stretch of the season, the next few weeks could define their trajectory.